Welcome back to St. Lucia's National Symposium on Creativity and Innovation. I'm Lucia and we are here at Independence Square in the town of Beaufort to continue the discussions that began this morning. I have the esteemed pleasure of being the moderator for a panel entitled Social Solutions in Action, Fostering Enterprise Through Creative Innovation. St. Lucia stands at an important juncture. With the twin pressures of climate vulnerability and economic fragility caused by ongoing geopolitical actions, we have to harness our extraordinary reserve of creativity, culture, and community resilience. These resources are already embedded in our people, making it a natural proving ground for social innovation as a driver of exclusive enterprise. These seem like a lot of big words, but these big words are attached to big ideas. I have the distinct honor of sitting next to four brilliant minds here in St. Lucia who are going to explain how they are already harnessing creative innovation, not merely as a commercial proposition, but as a social solution. One that builds on community capital, generates dignified livelihoods, and strengthens the resilience of our country's enterprises from the grassroots up. But don't take it from me, I'll let them introduce themselves. Let's start on the end with you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to be on this panel. I'm very, very excited to be here. My name is Jordan Norbert, and I am the CEO and founder of Eco Food Training and Certification Agency. We are a hybrid entity, so we operate as a social enterprise, but also as a startup. And what we do is we provide support to businesses, individuals, in helping them to incorporate sustainability within the food sector. So we work across multiple sectors because we believe in bridging the gap between certain sectors like the hospitality industry, the agricultural sector, and in education. And so with this, we provide support to organizations, businesses, government agencies in helping them embed sustainable initiatives within food systems.
Thank you so much. And that lovely lady next to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diane Félicien. I am the founder and CEO of Donation Foundation. Donation Foundation is actually a non-profit organization where we work with various communities in terms of coming up with creative ideas and creative solutions to a lot of the social ills that we see happening in our society. Our vision at Donation Foundation is innovative volunteerism for nation building. And of course, we have to look for ways as to how we could get more people involved in nation building and more people involved in giving back and coming towards St. Lucia and of course our Caribbean with a lot of solutions to a lot of the social ills we see happening in our society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Mila Charles, and I am the inventor and founder of Life OS Daily. Life OS Daily is an intelligent AI-driven operating system designed to help persons achieve their maximum potential. We have realized that in the event of AI, it has been used as tools to help a human become more productive. But all this productivity is done externally. We therefore decided that we can be innovative enough to design a system whereby AI helps persons develop personally. So in essence, it is a personal development tool and an infrastructure, a learning infrastructure that any information can be disseminated into daily microdoses to an individual. We understand how the mind works, and therefore we know that for something to become a subconscious act, you need constant repetition. And this is what the AI does. The system comes to you on a daily without you even having to do anything. You put in your identity, you put in your goals, and every day it comes, it gives you affirmations to affirm the identity, and it outlines strategic goals for you to execute on a daily. It reminds you during the day, it checks up on you to see whether you have achieved these goals, and it reminds you in the night again. So it's like an assistant without an assistant. Somebody holding you accountable without having somebody there, which we know everybody needs that.
Great, thank you so much. And our final panelist.
Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Dylan Boulogne, and I am the founder and co-director of Metaform Studio. I am an architect by profession and also a lecturer at the South Louis Community College. So our business is based in the AEC industry, which is the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. My other co-founder is also my wife, who is a civil engineer, and together we've been working on various projects throughout the island. And then what we did notice is that there is a very big gap between the price of materials and the execution. So we have a deficit in trades and a deficit in technical education. Also, the price of material is raising on a daily basis because we almost solely rely on imported material for any and all buildings around St. Lucia. So we came up with an innovative solution where we by using clay soil together with a proprietary blend of materials to create a unique block, which is probably the only one in the Lesser Antilles or in the Lower Caribbean region. It is not new in the sense that we did not invent the mold itself, but what we did was create a blend using the local soils and the different materials available, therefore reducing the cost of housing all the way down by 40%. So the average cost of a home right now sits between $400,000 and $450,000, not including land. Maybe in the north of the island, it is more expensive than outside. And the labor is about almost 45% of that cost. And normally labor should be about 30% of the cost. So we are trying to tackle that problem, and I think we've been very successful so far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So as you would have heard, we have a very varied panel who I think really embody the theme today, which is fostering enterprise through creative innovation. Throughout today's discussion, I want you both in the physical audience and those of you viewing on the Government of St. Lucia's YouTube and Facebook platforms to keep 4 themes in mind. Creative capital as social infrastructure, inclusion by design, resilience through enterprise, and creating enabling environments. These 4 themes are the pillars of the discussion that the 5 of us are going to have today. Well, I'll be leading this discussion. They have all of the wisdom and experience within them, and I'm really happy to start off this discussion with our first question. Any one of you can take this question. Don't rush all at once. From your experience, what does social innovation actually look like on the ground in St. Lucia? So you hear of social innovation, but in practice, what does that really mean? Can any of you give me a concrete example of creative problem solving that generated value within the community as well as creating economic opportunities? Who would like to go first? Go ahead.
Mic check, okay. Yeah, so with eco-food, well, how I started off with eco-food, first of all, I am a teacher. Well, yes, I'm still a teacher, but I was employed as a secondary school teacher with the Government of St. Lucia for almost 10 years before I actually left the teaching service and started my enterprise. Now, I've always had a passion for sustainability and sustainable development, even studying in Jamaica. My background is in hospitality and tourism management. And after deciding to leave teaching to start my enterprise, I realized that education is a key factor if you want to change a nation. right? And this was in the heights of COVID. This drive came to me. I saw how the pandemic really crippled our hospitality and food industry, and I realized that there was a gap in persons not knowing how to integrate sustainability into business in relation to hospitality. So when I left, I had to be innovative in figuring out how to start this thing that I really wanted to do. And one way of doing that was looking in my community. Right, I started at the grassroots level. I looked at persons, youth and women in particular, who probably had a passion for the hospitality and food and beverage industry, but didn't have a way of transitioning into the industry, because typically a typical tertiary education in that is pretty expensive at times, and you're probably not able to afford it. So we wanted to be able to create an opportunity for persons to be able to transition within the industry without feeling as if they're not capable financially. That's when we decided to partner with the World Chef Association. The World Chef Association is based in France, and they're the leading chef organizational authority in the world. They launched a sustainability culinary training program in Brazil in 2017, and since then they had grown to 8 facilities at the time, all around the world, South Africa, Russia, different parts of Brazil, but they weren't in the Caribbean. And that's when I saw opportunity to reach out to them, to partner with them. And after a few meetings, we became the first Caribbean island through EcoFood to be offering this international program. So with that, we had their support, and we were able to get persons who wanted an opportunity to provide the training, show them how to apply sustainability in the kitchen. They were able to graduate, and over 60% of our students are either employed within the hospitality industry or have started their own food businesses.
Great. And I think when you speak about partnerships for change and partnerships for innovation, this is really a concrete example of what that is. Would you say that that's innovation you made by reaching out to that organization? Do you think that was intentional, or did it emerge from a necessity that you saw on the ground?
Yes, so it was not intentional. I had to be creative, right? I am a small business, wanting to make big impact. So I leveraged from another organization that was bigger than mine, and that helped me gain some publicity, right? And also they also have an international certification, so that also helped in driving traction to my business as well.
Right.
Yes, so as a small business or medium-sized entity, these are some of the things that you can do to help leverage what you don't have off of another enterprise where your missions align, right? And of course, that will help you jumpstart.
So we're also getting free advice today.
Yes.
Do any one of you want to give a contribution? Can you give us an example of some creative problem solving that your organization did? We're doing ladies first.
All right. So Donation Foundation actually started from my challenges and social issues in terms of going through or facing a lot of the social issues that we see happening in our society: divorce, rape, suicidal thoughts, depression, just to name a few. And of course, whilst going through these social ills, I realized that, a lot was lacking in terms of what I wanted when it came to support, what I was looking for. And I realized that there was just a lot missing. And that is where Donation Foundation started. Now, when you speak about creativity, again, I'm going back to our mission, which is innovative volunteerism for nation building. What we have done at Donation Foundation is basically turn parks into feeding areas where we could feed people and they could feel that they are important, where they feel that they are recognized, where they feel safe. we have turned a pageant. We have the Miss Good Deeds Day pageant, where it's not all about beauty. It is about what you can do for your community, what you can do in terms of volunteerism, nation building, how you could give back, and how you could build upon that. We also look at, when it comes to our young people, we just recently had our caucus, our youth caucus, where we were able to have a caucus in Parliament and have our young people present ideas or solutions to what we see as gender-based violence. Another thing that we do at Donation Foundation, because working around the communities, you find that the communities are different. The needs vary. The people that you work with vary. So what we have to do is to find ways as to how to get our messages across. So with gender-based violence, what we have is that we get our messages across through street theater, or what we call forum theater, where we have our audience who are not just spectators, but they are actors. So they basically come in and make recommendations, or they come in and say, if it was me, this is how I would handle a situation. And of course, we find the gap either to tell them, well, it can be done differently, or yes, it was handled differently. We look at street theater, where at the spur of the moment, we just show up and have various scenes where, you know, we have scenes of bullying, scenes of teenage pregnancy, scenes of stalking, and basically see how the public would react to it. In Soufrière last week, we had a scene of a young man really tormenting somebody from the LGBTQ plus community. And it was amazing to see that there was this lady who kept on saying, leave him alone, leave him alone. But then there was other people who just laughed, and it was just basically like, you know, make more fun or say more things. And that is how we find creative ways to really get you know, people involved, community involved when it comes to the social ills that we see in society. Again, we try to look for the gaps. We look at the Empower Her, where we have climate and gender for our young people to see how, you know, climate change can have an impact on them and their community. So these are some of the things that we do at Donation Foundation when it comes to creativity, when it comes to the social ills, when it comes to getting not just, you know, and sometimes I hear people say it's not just something of the North, but, you know, we have everyone, irrespective of where they come from or what choice they make, involved in what we're doing.
Great. And that really speaks to that community value that I asked you about. And I think for you, Mr. Bologne, when we speak about creative problem solving for economic opportunities, I feel like you might have something to say. Huh?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that our solution was really born out of, because I graduated university in 2023, and coming back home as a qualified architect and even urban planner, because my degree is in both, I couldn't even find a job. I couldn't find an employment that would push me in the direction to continue developing. So it really was born out of a necessity. Okay, what can I do? And then normally persons like myself, you go abroad and study. We never come back home. We never contribute to society. We stay abroad. We get the accolades and whatnot. So I told myself and my wife, okay, we need to find something at home where we can feel like we can contribute and also make a living. So it's been a process. And we've arrived at, we did a lot of research, a lot of development, understanding what are the unique materials that can be used on island, going through the Ministry of Agriculture, doing that research. And we arrived at this blend, right, of material, using molds that are already established, and also building on that knowledge. Because St. Lucia has a lot of wonderful examples of all the construction, especially those that were done in the 1700s by the French and those by the British, of unreinforced masonry that rely on no steel. They exist today. We have the oldest building, intact building in St. Lucia, right outside of South Louis Community College. I think it was on the media kind of recently, a monster truck rode up that thing. And if you go inside, it's no steel. And I asked myself, what can we learn from those things and how do we implement that today? So instead of us learning, we've gone back where we've been into cheap construction. So we get stuff from China and PVC doors, it falls off, the house is running, it's leaking. And in our personal practice, we found that people, you have a concrete roof, 2 years after, you spend $850,000. This is the actual example. $850,000 investment, 2 years after your roof is leaking because the contractor didn't do it right, and you have to go back for more money from the bank is questioning you. It's a lot. So we really looked at this and said to ourselves, how can we give people homes for under $350,000? People can apply, so people can qualify for those loans, and how can we deliver a good product, locally made, for those persons. So I find that this was a little bit of a journey.
And I think that's really speaks to innovation, because innovation is change. Innovation is doing something differently, but sometimes it means going back to what we used to be doing.
Could I just add in a little bit? And I would agree with you that you said education is one of the most important things. And I couldn't have done something like this if I did not go to school. And a lot of people do not get the opportunity to do that, to go to university education. And if we have a lapse in educated people who are, especially in my field, in the technical areas, and we don't come home, we stay abroad, we never come back to see what we can do and make it work, how can we even talk about innovation? I mean, yes, you can start something, but in a technical field, the piece of building, it's going to fall down. So you don't want someone just by a little roadside skill to come and put up roads for buildings for you and that type of sort of thing. So you need to have a balance between the education, and we need to be able to, and that I believe would push innovation, especially in that sector, just a little bit more.
Great. And Mr. Charles, it's your turn.
Thank you. Well, as a serial entrepreneur that I am, and mindfulness coach, I realized that we can have as many innovative ideas as we may wish to, and they would be locked away. There are many of you sitting here in the crowd today with innovative ideas. However, you lack the execution. This is not just you, but it is something that every single person in life can identify with. We always know what we have to do, but we somehow have a problem doing it. This is what LifeOS is here to help with. We understand that with structures in place, motivation is not really needed. With the proper identity to drive your behavior, you will find the necessary results. Our philosophy is simple. Identity drives behavior, and behavior drives results. Resilient communities are built by execution. People who are aware of what needs to be done and them doing it. This is where LifeOS came into play. I realized that people need more structure in their lives. They need more clarity. The brain wasn't meant to be bombarded with 10 million things at one time. If you don't have clarity and you don't have focus, you can't execute. This is why, if you understand the identity of who you're becoming or who you would like to be, you can then execute from this standpoint with much more focus. This started as a method of just being personal development, where I used my system to benefit myself daily. Why in the morning? Because if you start your morning on the right foot, your whole day is likely to continue on that level. Now, the idea has expanded so much because I wasn't even aware of what I was building. I have built an entire railroad that any information can be disseminated on there. My son, he's out there, he's an aspiring pilot, and I built a 90-day aviation curriculum. And he receives daily doses of information to his phone. So he's already learning to become a pilot every single day by the information being sent to his phone, and it actually gives him a quiz at the end of the week because I designed it that way. I'm just saying this to show you how this is limitless. You have students that have to learn. You have teachers that want people to understand things. You have customer service training. You have HR pilots. You have awareness programs that you want to give. It is limitless. The fact that the railway is there, everybody has a phone in their hand. You don't have to press no buttons. It comes to you automatically. So therefore, it enhances behavioral change by reinforcement of self-identity on a daily and whatever information that you choose to disseminate through the system.
Great. So I think this is our first question. We're just starting, and there's been such a wealth of knowledge and experiences shared already. But I think one of the things, and it came up when you all were speaking, is the idea of that gap. There is a gap that exists between creative innovation and what you all are trying to do, as well as who gets to participate in that sort of innovation. So we spoke about having people being educated and having people being skilled. Who do you think is left out of those conversations on social innovation? Do you feel like it's somehow locked behind a gate, that social innovation seems like this big idea and everybody doesn't get to participate in it? How do we bridge that gap? Diana is very excited to get us started.
Yes, I'm very excited about that question. I believe that our people from the rural communities are being left out. I believe that people from the vulnerable groups are being left out.
When you say vulnerable groups, just explain to the people who those groups are.
We speak about the LGBTQ plus people. We speak about people from the rural communities. We speak about the deaf. We speak about, people who are not able to do things on their own, persons with disabilities. They are being left out because as a grassroots organization and being on the ground, they are always left behind. And it's always an afterthought when it comes to persons with disabilities, vulnerable groups. It's almost like, oops, what did we do? I just looked around, and again, I'm looking in the audience. Where are some of our people from the vulnerable groups? These are the people that we often leave behind. Because of when we look at innovation is not just about programs, but we speak about the single mothers, the persons working in the community. We speak about those who cannot read and write. How are we including them in the innovation? How are we doing that? And again, it's a young person creating an opportunity for themselves where there is no opportunities. It's a community organizing itself with systems that always fail or sometimes fail. And these are some of the people that we see that are being left behind. We see SDG number 9, but we also need to speak to SDG number 17, which is partnership for the goals. We cannot do it alone. And that is something that we at Donation Foundation, we are heavy on the SDGs. And I was very happy this morning when I heard our director speak about SDG number 9. But we also need to take about the other SDGs, especially SDG number 17. So we need to come together as a collective body when it comes to a lot of the things that we want to create. We need to ensure that all of these people are part of the discussions. They are in the rooms. They are part of the decision making. And this is how we are going to be inclusive and we are going to be innovative.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Norbert, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, so in addition to what my my colleague said, I would say that I believe, well, as an educator, being in the system for almost 10 years, I believe that one of the groups in particular, in addition to persons with special needs, and also for the first time we did a pilot with the special education unit in Vieux-Fort with more of their senior students in our Like a Chef program. They did very well. They graduated with the certification. So we are really happy to be a part of that. In addition to that, as somebody coming out of the secondary school environment, I believe that one of the groups that I believe we tend to leave behind are those young people or students that appear to be delinquent. And usually, when you come across young people like that, they're very gifted. But the problem is they don't have proper guidance, they don't have structure, right? And as you said, sir, they're not being I don't know if you could help me out.
They are not able to execute properly because the guidance and the systems are not in place.
Right.
If we only understand that mindset is everything, and sometimes we tend to look at all of the external things too much. And if we pay a little more attention into developing the mindset of the people, therefore, the execution will be better. We're trying to give them things to do, hoping that the things will change them, when we need to change them, and then they will produce better things. So I think part of the focus should be off of the external aspect of things and more get towards the development of our individuals and their mindset, and teaching them how to set goals, and teaching them how to build their confidence, and teaching them how to execute on their ideas. Once you develop this internally, it will be mirrored externally. You will be executing from that standpoint. So a lot of my philosophies and my principles are geared around building individuals internally, and I know if I build them internally, I can expect great results from them externally.
And I just want to bridge that gap and connect the dots and allow you, Mrs. Norbert, to expand on that point. Because
Yeah.
I think it was really interesting that you brought up the students that seem delinquent.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you hear, at least from my experience, that those delinquent students, sometimes the system that they're operating within isn't doing for them what they need.
Right.
Or sometimes you hear that they're bored because
Yeah.
they have passed that level, but they're still stuck. So just
Yeah. So a lot of the times, right, the students are telling us, they're telling us through their behavior, but we're not interpreting it the right way. There was an incident where there was a student in Form 3. It was my first year being a teacher, and I taught at Clendon Mason. And the student, he wasn't rude, but he just was not going to classes, he wasn't coming to school, and then when we called in his parent, he said, "Miss, I don't want to be at this school." And I said, "Why you don't want to be at this school?" He said, "Because this school doesn't offer what I really want to do." And it was the first time he was telling his mother that. And she was like, "Well, what is it that you want to do?" And he says, "I want to do auto mechanics." But Clendon Mason was offering that at the time. So, and did you know the parent refused to move him from the school to the other school because, quote unquote, that other school is considered to be not a traditional high school. And these are some of the thinking that we need to get rid of, right? Every student, every young person, every person in general, they are intelligent in their own way. Mm-hmm. Just because a child does well and get 9 ones in the CXCs or whatever, that doesn't mean that the child that is doing an auto mechanic course or a cosmetology course is not as brilliant, but just in a different way. Mm-hmm. Are we supporting these other groups of children, right? I'll give you another example. There's a little boy that lives by my home, right? He doesn't go to school regularly. He has a lot of family issues, but we try to help him out as best as we can. This young man goes around fixing bicycles. He's probably in grade 6 or Form 1. I don't even think he started secondary school. And he goes around fixing bicycles. He wasn't taught in a formal institution how to fix a bicycle, but the boy does it. This is what we call brilliance. But you would look at a child like that and say, oh, because the child not going to school and the child giving trouble and whatever, that child should be put aside, right? So we have to provide the systems and the different ways to support these children.
Great. Thank you so much. Diane, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to add to my colleague's point. As a delinquent myself, or also a high school dropout, because I'm a high school dropout. I think I was maybe 2 days away from being turned over to the Upton Gardens Girls Center, running away from home. And sometimes, and I'm happy that you brought out that point, because sometimes we see children behaving in a certain way, and the problem is not with the children, it is with what they are facing at the time. It is the problems that they have at home. It is some of the things, that we say to our children. I remember seeing, my menstrual cycle at the age of 11, and I went and I said, hey, mommy, watch blood. And the first thing she said, Pavin ba to akaisia. You understand? So sometimes it goes back to as far as the parents in terms of how they relate and how they make the homes comfortable for the children. Even working with the inmates, or I normally call them the ladies of the Bodily Correctional Facility. These ladies are beautiful on the inside. And some of them has just lost their way along the way. But how are we, society, willing to accept them when they decide to make that change and come back to society? And these are some of the things that we have that we, not just as society, but we as a people, need to be more forgiving and accepting. And that is where I end. Thank you.
You ended on a good note. I'll let you give your 2 cents.
Right. So I think just like you said, the young people, I think are really, really, it's really my focus. And also as a lecturer at the South Louis Community College, I could see that, especially in the AEC industry, there is very little pathway for those students to either go to university or to go directly to work. And then when you look at meaningful work, so I have 2 students who are with me, well, students and past students. They've been helping me prepare the materials, and they're learning about the different materials. So I hope to expand it over time, but I do see that there is a gap where there are a lot of I would say jobs and opportunities available in the trades. However, what are we currently doing to give these persons or these young people an opportunity to tap into that money? And sectors just like construction and agriculture have traditionally been, and still are in very, very much in a greater degree, what you call a no barrier to entry. For you to be a doctor, you need to have done 10 years and all of this time, and then before you even start earning any money. But if you are 18 years old, you have a good back, you have good hands, you can start to earn money, but you need a structured way to enter the market. And that doesn't mean 2 years of school. You could start learning different trades and start learning different skills very quickly. So with our initiative, we hope to empower these well, right now it's young men. I mean, I sent an open call. I got more young men interested. But I do think that young men is a group that we need to start looking at a little bit more in depth, because either they're fixing something or they're killing each other, right? So we just focusing, and it's a part of a bit of a mentorship where I share what I know, the little experience that I have so far, because we do find that there's a lapse also in the mentorship. I mean, I could even pose a question to the crowd, to the older gentlemen in the crowd. How many young men or how many young people are you mentoring? We tend to think that they'll come to us, but why not go and look for them? I'm at the school, I'm teaching people, but it doesn't mean that, yes, I'm impacting different lives, but am I reaching them individually? How am I trying to empower and give them responsibility, therefore to develop the discipline required to be good functioning persons in society? So with this initiative, we're trying to do that. Now I'm mentoring 2 young men, and just me. What about other people in the crowd? How many people are you mentoring, and that's not family, that's not necessarily your nephew? We need to go out and do that. So I think we have a responsibility, especially the older generation. I don't want to put it too much, and I'm pretty young myself. But we have a responsibility to share what we know. So we have all these older carpenters, older masonry persons, and I've heard things from them like, "Oh, I'm not teaching people. I don't want to share what I know. Or come and work. I give you $60. Go and break your back for the day, and the price is $100. The guy paying you $60 and collecting $40 on your labor. That's slavery. You ask me that. But just trying to see how we can impact those people. So we say young people who do not have that traditional pathway to go to university, you need to have about $300,000 EC dollars to go study architecture, and that's 4 or 5 years. Not all of us have that. So the construction industry is free to accept. Right now it's very unregulated. It's a bad thing, but it's also a good thing, meaning that anybody who has the skills, can market themselves well, can start to earn money. So why can't an 18-year-old have $20,000 saved in when he's 20? You know, so that's our real focus. We want to help these young people earn so that they can now make these lifelong investments that will pay out in the future.
Great. And if you all remember that I told you one of the themes to listen out for was inclusion and how we can design inclusively. I think we heard a lot of that from you all. We heard about shifting the mindsets, and I think that's the foundation of where we have to start. We spoke about making sure that vulnerable groups are included. And I really like what you said about who are you mentoring, because you can't, I speak to people who tell you that the young people don't want to learn. But are they always aware of what it is that there is to learn? And so I think we're starting off on a very good note of, I hope that the policymakers are listening to the ideas that are coming from people who are working within the community. They're the ones on the forefront. They're the ones with the knowledge and experience. And it's up to you now to take those experiences and take that wisdom and turn it into tangible policies that will impact various demographics in St. Lucia. And those demographics, despite being sometimes locked out of those creative industries, they remain resilient. Sometimes the resilience doesn't always lead to good things. We heard about young men either fixing things or killing each other. But I want us to turn our attention now to that word resilience. It's become a very popular word in the Caribbean. You hear of resilience after hurricanes. You hear of resilience in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what does a resilient community enterprise look like? So we want to take away those external, well, I mean, sometimes it does depend on the external factors, but we want to look inward at what does a resilient community enterprise look like? What characteristics distinguish enterprises that survive those external shocks, whether it's climate, economic, or social, from those that don't? So what is that mindset, or how do we incorporate innovation and creativity to ensure that our social enterprises are resilient? I think when I think of my panel and I think of resilience, the young man next to me comes to mind first. I don't know if you're ready to take on that mantle.
I can. I know words like resilience and sustainability tend to be, it's kind of like a buzzword, and you really want to know what is it you're talking about. Resilience is the ability for something to bend and to return to its form. So if you're looking at a resilient enterprise, at least from my perspective, I would really value education. So you need to be flexible, and you need to be able to determine and pivot in the face of different challenges. This is not, for example, this is not our first idea. You know, you often hear things from people and they tell you, you need to focus on one thing. Do not spread yourself too thin. I don't believe that. I believe you must spread yourself so thin because you need to know what works and what does not work. And what does not work, you drop it. You let it go. You take a loss. You lose some money. You know, you get it out. So anything that's not working, you know. So if you focus on one thing, how do you know that all your time and your investment is going to just pay off magically? So I tell all of the younger guys, when I talk to older older mentors in my life, they would tell you advice like, you need to slow down. You're too impatient. You have to wait. You have to wait your turn, wait your time. I don't believe that. I believe you have to go out and look and hunt and find. And what doesn't work, you don't be afraid to lose $1,000 in some cases. Just don't be afraid to lose it. As long as you're not hurting people or harming people or end up in the judicial system, you find it. So you need to put your eggs all in one basket and get more baskets and fill them up with eggs. So if one basket breaks, I will never be out of eggs. You know what I mean? So it's just the kind of thinking. And to me, that would make something very resilient, where if one part of my money is cut out, it's okay. I can still make money on another end because I've pivoted. So with us, we're doing the blocks only because we realize that we cannot. If I'm not supplying my own materials, how am I controlling the cost of a house or a construction project? So yes, I design, but when I design, the contractor takes all the decisions. He does what you call cost cutting. So it's the cost cutting. It happens while the project is going on. So they decide to not cover the rebar, not use the waterproofing, not use the this, not use the that, and then before you know it, your house is sinking and you have cracks and whatnot. But on our end, we do what you call planning and coordination. So if I plan and coordinate, how do I control this person who is supposed to do the execution? So why not have everything under one umbrella? So we do planning, coordination, construction management, and now we want to build. And we want to empower young persons to go out and do that. And we act as a support system to them. So they get the support, they get the guidance they need. And why can't they build a home and earn a $20,000 markup? You know, a $100,000 home. With us, we're looking at small homes. That will be about $80,000. You get a studio apartment for $80,000. And that's a concrete roof. That's not a wooden roof. So your premium is going to be the lowest with the lowest house. You know? And it's not things that I'm just making up, you know, we wishful thinking. My wife is a civil engineer. We've been working in the field. We've calculated the cost. We've run the numbers, sorry. And it's something that we realistically think, you know, that is possible. So we're coming out with this thing and we hope that it can have an impact. You know, if it doesn't have an impact, then we pivot. We go elsewhere. You know, but I will never leave it alone. So if it's not something that's not working, we get rid of it. But if it's working, you reinvest and you double up.
Great. I think, Mr. Charles, I think mindset has been a big part of your contribution today. So we speak about resilience. So from your perspective, what do you think are some of those characteristics that social enterprises will need to remain resilient?
I believe that a resilient community is defined by its members who understand that a pause is not necessarily a stop. It is okay to take time out to refocus, to recalibrate, to re-engineer, to whatever else you want to call it. But these moments are actually very, very important. I'll give you an example. While building this system and passing it over around to my friends, who giving me feedback about how it's been influencing their lives, changing their daily routines, helping them execute more focusedly. I did an update and I lost 70% of those users that I had onboarded already. And it wiped out 40% of what I had built. After 3.5 months of working on that, I just took 2 days off and I need some time to rest my brain. Yeah, because it's like you just work so hard, you see in your progress, you have 50-something people on there, the system seems to be working fine, and then something comes up and it just wipe it away. However, the 2 days off, the 3 days off, when I went back in the system and I understood what had happened, it made me build a system even stronger. And now it proved to me other ways now the system could have been used. So, was the crash bad? No, it wasn't. It was just part of the process. So if we understand, even in life, some things we may look at as being bad, they are just part of the process. We learn. We learn what to do and we learn what not to do. So either way, we learning. This learning thing is a continuous life journey. It ain't gonna never stop. However, the information that we receive, it is about how do we now use this information in our lives to help impact others and to better ourselves and our communities. This is what I think.
Great. And I want to ask you, Mrs. Norbert, and Diana, I have a question after this specifically for you. But I want to ask you, your business is focused a lot on the hospitality sector. And that's one of the sectors that I think is really vulnerable to those shocks. You have the hurricane season coming up in just about 2 months. We saw how the pandemic disrupted that sector. How does your social enterprise remain resilient?
Okay, I like this question a lot. Because entrepreneurship is not for the weak, you know, it can drain you. It really can. And, you know, as you said, sometimes you have to take some days off to recuperate and get back because if the thing take you, you'll just say, okay, I finish with this, right? But resilience is the foundation of innovation and sustainability, I believe. Because when you're in a situation where you have very little to work with, you will find a way to make it work, right? Especially as an entrepreneur. Going back to your question about the hospitality sector, during COVID, at the time I was still an educator and I was at home. To me, I know a lot of people had really bad experiences during COVID, and I really empathize with these persons in particular. But my experience was very different. I saw a lot of people really push to survive during COVID. I was literally at my home. I would be at home because we were teaching online at the time. And there was a gentleman, 3 to 4 days a week, he would drive by my home with fresh vegetables, fruits, grown provisions, on repeat, without a doubt. And that in itself alone showed resilience to me, right? He found a way to make, I think he had lost his job because of the COVID pandemic, and he found a way to provide for himself, to provide for his family, and to provide for the community as well, right? When we look at the hotel sector, one of the areas that we focus on the eco-food is waste management, particularly food waste management. Food waste is a big issue within the hospitality industry, and there is no systematic mechanism in place to really manage it efficiently. One way of being resilient within these kitchens is taking an ingredient and using the entire ingredient. How are you being creative? And that's one of the things that we do with our students. If I give you a carrot, how can you use the entire carrot so that there's no waste at all? Using the stem, the main part of the carrot, the skin, how can you do that? Using our ground provisions, how can you use our ground provisions to make innovative dishes and products? Did you know that the melon, right? The melon, the part between the red part that we consume and the skin, the middle that white section, it can be used and be candied, right? So these are, the different ways in which we're trying to encourage persons, even persons that have small food businesses. What are you doing differently from the other person that's selling bacon fried chicken up by the road?
Right.
That's one of the things that I tell that's one of the first examples I use with my students. Everywhere you go in St. Lucia, it's just a bacon chicken, bacon chicken, bacon chicken. What are you do? What other ideas can you come up with in being creative with food? There's so many, and information is there. You can go on YouTube. You can go on blogs. We need to open up our minds. Right.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes, you're welcome.
Now, Diane, I did tell you that I had a question just for you. We've spoken a lot about creative innovation. We've spoken a lot about resilience. The information is out there. We can access the information, but we know for a fact that in St. Lucia, there are structural barriers that impede creative innovation and social entrepreneurs as well. So you've been doing this work for quite some time. I think you're in a unique position to let us know whether those barriers are about finance, policy gaps, capacity, or is it something totally different? What do you think is holding back that creative innovation and the ability for social entrepreneurs to succeed?
In addition to what you just mentioned, because all of it is part of the barrier, however, what we have is a lot of people, because of where they come from. So for instance, we were in Soufre and we heard a young lady say because she's from Barron's Drive, they are looked at in a different way. Because, shantytown, they would be looked at in a different way. And a lot of it has to be with stigma in terms of where you come from as an individual, in terms of what your life was before then. And also, when you look at, for instance, some of the social barriers, we speak to sign language. How many of us can have a conversation with somebody who's not able to speak? And that is one of the real barriers that we're seeing in terms of, being able to, and it goes back to as far as education. Maybe what are some of the solutions that we have so that we have a lot of our people that can do sign language, that are able to communicate. We look at, the police station. We look at, other areas where services are offered. So these are some of the barriers in addition to what you mentioned. And I think another thing, again, is we have a lot of our grassroots organization like Donation Foundation who do a lot of work on the grounds, who are in the communities around, on the grounds, basically on the grounds. And the support, the funding is not really available to help them do a lot more. So despite we have the communities and we have the people and we have the grassroots organizations, there needs to be more access to funding, more access to education, and education is a big thing, which is one of the areas we'll be going into shortly, in terms of educating people about services that are available so that they too can be part of the opportunities that are available to them. So sometimes it's not just about, maybe not funding, but they're not being educated about the opportunities that are available.
Okay, great. I really like how you encapsulated it. To my audience in person, we are going to be coming to you very shortly. We would like to hear from you. We would like to get your contributions. You are the industry experts. I see district education officers. I see past principals. There are teachers. There are policymakers, people working in innovation. You've been listening to what these people have to say. So in just a few minutes, we will be taking questions from the audience. So please prepare yourself. But before we move to our esteemed audience, I do want to ask, and I'll start with you, and because of our time constraints and as much as the five of us would like to sit here the whole day, if you could just keep it to a few seconds, what would you like to see as a concrete policy recommendation or partnership or initiative that could meaningfully advance social enterprises in St. Lucia, let's say in the next 2 years?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question, to be honest. I think, this is my honest opinion, in terms of policy, I would, it's really tough to say. Okay, I'm going to answer it how I see it. Mm-hmm. I think there is a very good case for policymakers and establishing different procedures and practices. However, we need people like myself and the people on the panel to push the boundaries, because policymakers, they do not see the future. You look at maybe a larger country and then you may try to mirror something based off of that. But for example, look at the idea of apprenticeships. We have 0 apprenticeship programs available because maybe, like they say, maybe the young people are actually really lazy. But I don't believe that. I have a group of hardworking young men who are dedicating their time, and they don't receive a pay, at least not yet. They can demonstrate loyalty and they have demonstrate some sort of camaraderie. But maybe the real reason is that those who have skills, they are not willing or maybe not able to share those skills, especially within the construction industry. So maybe on the side of policy, something that would be blended to bring back apprenticeship programs, get the private sector to train people. At Sir Arthur, we try our best, but we are just an institution. I will not speak on the whole of SAF. I'm not in the administration, but I'm part of the engineering faculty. And we do try our best, but there are huge big gaps. Private industry is going to do what's more efficient for them and hire persons with skills that they require. And we cannot always be, or very seldomly, on top of that. So that would be my contribution.
Before I go on to any of my panelists, because I do want to prioritize your time in the audience, are any of you prepared to pose a question to the panel or have a contribution? Yes? You going to come forward, please? Have to come and sit next to me on the nice orange couch. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I am very curious about your panelists' experience with copywriting and patenting? Because you have great ideas like your business, your app. I'm really curious about that, because for us laypersons, we hear that it is expensive to do that. And sometimes you have an idea and you don't want to verbalize it or put it out there for fear that somebody else will steal your idea. So how do you protect your intellectual property? What was your experience with that?
Well, I'm actually in the process of protecting my intellectual property right now, and I have an international person doing it for me. I don't really believe in the idea of people stealing your ideas. This is just me, because I believe everybody's unique. I don't think ideas are there sitting down waiting for anybody to execute them. So if you say it's your ideas and you're not executing, was it really your idea when the person is ready to move before you? So I don't really believe in people stealing people's ideas. Your idea is yours. I don't think anybody could take away what is really, really meant to be yours. And that's just how I see it. However, you need to go through the right channels to protect yourself in this line of business.
Mrs. Norbert, you wanted to respond as well?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. It's funny because when I actually created my system, that was one of my fears. So it took me a while before I started to really publicize what I was doing. But now I agree with what you say, now that I'm more experienced. But that doesn't negate from the fact that copywriting and trademarking is very, very, very important. There are persons out there that may have access to more resources, more funding, more, than what you have, and they may be able to, take it and move with it. So I would say don't be too paranoid about it, but get it done when you can.
Okay.
Right? For me, how I dealt with that was I basically, everything that I was putting out there, I put my face to it. So everything that I was advertising on social media, before, a lot of companies and businesses used to want to separate the founder from the company, because if the founder leaves, it will affect the That's not true, right? Visibility and personal branding is very, very important now, especially now when it comes on to if you want to build a very successful business, because people want connection, right? So for me, my way of dealing with that was basically putting my face to everything that I basically put out there.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Folks, we have had a very broad discussion. I personally would love to sit here for the rest of the day, but our symposium today does feature a very packed schedule. Those of you who are here with us physically do have the luxury of being able to speak to our panelists as soon as we get off the stage and in the future. But for now, we have to wrap things up here. So I just want to remind all of you listening on the television, on your screens, and here in person, that innovation without inclusion is just change for the few. What we have explored today is a vision for change for all of St. Lucia, and that work begins as soon as we leave the square today. I've been Lucia Charlemagne, and it's been my distinct pleasure to carry you through this panel, and I hope that the discussion continues long after today. Thank you so much.